Hello, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson, where we talk about hot topics and difficult conversations around issues that affect the Black, Brown, and melanated community in America and abroad. Today is Wednesday. I hope that you guys are having a beautiful, productive hump day. Typically Wednesdays are very difficult for us to kind of navigate, especially on work days, etc. So I want to be able to make this discussion fairly quick, trying to keep it under 30 minutes because I got about a good 20, under 20 actually to have the discussion. But I have some talking points that I've already developed, and we'll hear a little bit from Kellyo about some of his thoughts around um, topic of discussion. So the said topic of discussion is the very interesting topic about how it is that we choose to correct our children's actions or parent our kids from a place of, what would you call it? Productive parenting. Let's go with that, right? So I have I guess some basic, as a clinician, right? I have some thoughts about parenting. And then outside of a clinician, as a person who is a mother and um a godmother and all of those things, I have some separate thoughts about parenting. Okay. And it's interesting because, like, from a professional lens, you kind of look at the overall scope of what people have to deal with, the realities of the various types of personalities that kids develop over the course of a lifespan. And um clinically, we have to remove our personal beliefs around parenting from that experience so that we can help people cultivate reality based ideas or reality based solutions for the difficulties that they're struggling with around parenting. And we lean heavily into the science. Social science tells us a lot about the direction that the world is going in, how it is that the evolution is working or not working, and what practices better facilitate space for people to grow into the capacity in which they have to be productive members of society. So at the core of me, I feel that parenting is a difficult task for any human being. And for people who take on that task, I commend them 100%. I don't feel like it's enough to say happy Mother's Day, to say happy Father's Day, to say happy Grandparents Day, and that kind of stuff, right? To those people who step into those jobs, right? Um, but I also believe that it is a thankless job. Like, we do it without even wanting someone to tell us that they appreciate us for what we're doing. And we don't really think about the importance of us being appreciated, but also being supported by the community. Because when they say it takes a village, it's always taken community to properly curate an ideal human being that's a contributing member of society. And I feel like that is essentially the job that we are handed. So the title of the show comes from a viewer, and the viewer said corporal punishment creates abusers, and their solution is don't hit kids. The uptick in violence is due to abusive homes. But what I'll say is this, I just want to point out a fact, right? It's an uptick in violence because it's a more prevalent rate of amount of aggression, violence, violent acts, shootings, killings, murder, suicides, that kind of thing, right? Robberies, armed robberies, all of that is after child abuse laws were placed into effect. I just want to put that there, right? And before child abuse laws came into effect heavily in the 80s, and became a real page turner in the 90s, we didn't have all of these violent crimes committed by people. So corporal punishment was the go-to, actually, right? They say put the fear of God in the kid. It was the fear of the parent and grandparent and auntie and uncle and neighbor and those people around you that would maybe see you doing something wrong and then discipline you, and then tell your parents and your grandparents and they discipline. It was a whole thing, okay? So that I just want to point out that fact, okay? And I want to know what your beliefs around parenting in general are, right? So my belief system is that I am of the mindset that sometimes kids need to be simply understood in order for us to be effective parents. Because if we're making decisions that they don't have anything to do with, because we are, when we make the decision to put them in a structured daycare center, when we make the decision to put them into a structured education system, when we make the decision to allow them to have play dates, when we make the decision to allow them to have exposure to family systems, we are creating the environment in which is essentially responsible for conditioning them as little human beings that are currently on the horizon. They're going to continue to develop, they're going to continue to become, and we are making the decisions as to what that looks like when we start making those small, minor choices as to who and how shows up in their life, right? So I just want to put that reminder out there. But these are things that oftentimes that I feel like parents are not fully aware of all the time, okay? So let's talk about some of the struggles around parenting. Parenting modern day kids requires insight, curiosity, resiliency. Overwhelmingly patient, you said? Yeah. You do have to be extremely patient. So I'm gonna agree with Kel. So I'm not sure if you guys can hear him, but he said that the kids of modern day society are more outspoken. They have more outbursts than kids back in our day because they feel more comfortable because of the child abuse laws. That's what I mentioned earlier. But right, like he's saying that they're more debating, debative. Is that a right? They do challenge your authority. They will push you to the limit. And unfortunately, many of the difficulties that we create are solely around just us not knowing the impact of the decisions that we make, I think. Because sometimes we don't know, we think we're doing the right thing for our kid. We're exposing them to the right types of circumstances that every child requires, every child needs, or whatever. And we think that we're doing our due diligence, but sometimes we're creating the problems that we face and have to move through in the future. We just didn't know it. So I think that saying, when you know better, you do better, completely applies there. It's difficult to decide what type of parenting practice is more appropriate, right, for your child, because it requires that you get to know your child in a very intimate way. And I always say that that's the piece of parenting that can lead to the mental distress, because parents suffer when we talk about maternal mental health, right? Parents that are maternal, because there's also paternal mental health issues that come from trying to parent kids that are going through difficult or challenging moments and things like that, become very resistant to you, because over the course of differentiation, children typically pull away. But also, before they even start doing that, there is an intensified manipulation that typically happens when kids are younger. And parents sometimes find themselves overwhelmed because when a parent waits too long to have children, and I know somebody out there is like, well, what's too long, or when should you be having kids, or blah, blah, blah. But sometimes parents have the tendency to wait a bit too long before they actually start having children. And when that happens, unfortunately, the process of parenting becomes more difficult. The thing is, with age and with maturation also comes intolerance. We become less tolerable, less patient, um, and more willing to divest from things that are not long-term beneficial for us as we grow as human beings. So I think that sometimes these are spaces where parents are creating this distress that leads to them taking it well above what's required when it comes to the way that they discipline their children or render corrective action. But also we go through stress, depression, we go through financial overwhelming moments, we go through unexplained or unanticipated medical expenses due to the children going and living life, doing the things that kids do, um, and randomly having accidents and things. Like, it happens. I am a mother of 11, and it's not always been easy. Let's put it like that. um, it's You never know for sure what the right decision is. But what I do say is that if you get the proper help, right? If you pull in your resources, if you start talking to the elders in your community, if you lean on to the people who have parented and have come out on top of things, all things considered, right? It can reduce the amount of mental distress that you have to experience as a parent, okay? And you also have to be permissive with yourself. Give yourself space and time to simply understand and to accept that we're human in our processes, and we're going to make mistakes or missteps, right? But we have to trust the process and trust that God would never put us in a place to where we are not able to grow out of, right? Benefit from that situation. So whatever your higher power is, I say lean into that, pray, meditate, manifest, do the things that are necessary to keep yourself whole, because you are an essential element to whatever the long-term outcome of your child's health, wellness, compositions are. Um, but that's that part, right? So let's jump into this. Discipline or corrective action attempts. I want to know what your beliefs are around how it is you discipline your child, right? What are your thoughts around what you feel, what you deem is appropriate? What does your discipline plan for your child look like? Are you a person that's proactive and had a discipline plan in place before any problems started to persist, or were you a person who kind of just parented from the place of let's just see how this thing unfolds? Um, are you a parent who is trying to be intentional about not repeating the things that you've identified as mistakes of your parents? How do you guys feel about that? Because what I'm going to say is this. Sometimes there's some dissonance. Sometimes we don't feel like we should discipline our kids physically, like this viewer, because we've had experience with extreme child abuse in the past. And I don't mean just your run of the mill, or I was hit with a belt. I mean extension cords, switches, choking, knockdown, drag out fights, right? This may be a thing that you've experienced in the past, and it's something that created space for you to lean very far left with the way that you decided that you would parent your children. And what I say is, when we lean so far left as to avoid the thing that we assume is so terrible in the right, we don't realize the benefits that came from the overall exposures. Yeah. Yeah. Because here is the thing, even though your parents may have gone so far off kilter and may have been abusive, yeah, it got your attention, it corrected your actions, it made you ambivalent about future decisions, right? Yeah, it definitely, yeah, it creates a reluctance to step into a place, not even in the same situation though. It
we began a long time ago. We took out of the home, out of the workplace, out of the school, and replaced them with rules to safeguard something happen. Took the parents with power.
I agree. So he was talking about it began with a component of yeah.
Ideation, and then you break that with technology. It blows out the water. Not technology.
But then also with technology, with the evolution of technology, I think kids have lost their natural ability to lean in on their parents for information. Right. And they think that everything that's on, yeah, they think everything that's on the computer is reliable. Right. They don't know how to go, and most kids, you ask them, how do you go to the library and do research, conduct research, and how do you determine whether or not the research is reliable and things like that? They don't even know how to do that. What they know how to do is to chat GPT and to Google everything. And they think that everything they find is reliable information just because it's printed on the internet. Now, in my opinion, when you find yourself that person that does not want to do the thing that you've had done to you, and you've had those exposures of extreme child abuse, and you go all the way this way, you're creating your own chaos. And then I think that that's the thing that contributes to the exacerbation of violent crimes and things like that, because parents start to feel hopeless and helpless when it comes to their position in their children's lives. Children are not your property. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I feel like from a spiritual lens, God has entrusted us with the very, very large charge of producing positive seeds that contribute to the overall positive structure and evolution of society. And I feel like we've got to stand firm and realize that sometimes it comes with having to discipline our kids. Does that mean that you must physically discipline your kids or move to corporal punishment? No. But it does mean that at some point we must be people who take advantage of the realities in front of us and who understand that sometimes that's a necessary component. Like sometimes that thing, is a necessity. And in order for us to do our due diligence, in order for us to do our job, we just got to bite the bullet. Sometimes you've got to have a structured, tiered discipline plan so you don't get emotional in the process. But you also lean in to understand your kid. You also have your child in the mindset where they fully understand that, okay, if I go so far, there will be physical consequences. And the physical consequences can look a lot of different ways. I've helped people develop lots of creative ways to discipline their children and to structure their discipline plan as to how it mimics societal's expectation for the way discipline is rendered on adults, right? When we break the law. But I think to say don't hit at all, I say do whatever it is that you feel works for you. I will say for me, that's unrealistic, to say the least. That was unrealistic. Even if it never came down to me physically reprimanding my kids, it's the thought that it could happen. I believe that it's the thought that it could happen that prevented my kids from doing a lot of things that I've seen other people struggle with along their parenting journey. So those are my thoughts. Continue to share your thoughts and your reflections. Let me know how you feel children best respond to corrective action attempts and stuff by parents, by yourself. If you have kids, let me know what your thoughts are. If you don't have kids, like your thoughts as to how it is that you will parent or discipline your kids when you do have children. Let me know what it is that you think contributes to the uptick in violent crimes and that sort of thing that we're seeing. Do you think that parents are checked out? Maybe they have. Maybe they have. Do you think parents are overwhelmed? Do you think that the government has a little bit too much say so into how it is that people raise or develop their own children? Like, are you a person who is of the belief system that people should not hit their kids? Like this viewer thinks, right? This viewer feels like you shouldn't hit your kids. And I feel like, hey, they have the right to feel that way. They have the right to raise their kids however it is that they want to raise them. It's their children, not mine. But I think that we also have to look at the fact that we contribute to our chaos or remove the potential for chaos to ensue if we are mindful as to how we look at that whole piece. Okay. So that is all that I have, you guys. I hope that you guys, like I said, are having a fantabulous Wednesday and that everything that you plan to get done in this day so far has started to unveil itself in a way that is conducive for you in your day. So if there is nothing else, thank you so much for watching. And if you are watching the show for the very first time, do like, subscribe, and if the content was beneficial for you, go ahead and hit that share button and share the content across social media platforms. I look forward to checking the comments and seeing kind of where you guys are on this topic and having a more expanded conversation, because I do feel like that's something we have to talk about. If we don't start talking about these things, I think more and more parents will be led to do these things that we're seeing essentially for the first time in such large numbers. Parents committing murder suicide for them and their children because they're so overwhelmed. And I think like the financial experiences and some of the struggles and parental difficulties that have been ensuing for many people has overwhelmed them to the point where they felt like that was an only option. So I would love to start having the conversation. I'd love to talk to you guys more about it, and continue to be a component of inspiration and positivity in your connected systems. May you spread love and light everywhere you go. So that is all that I have. Later days. Bye.